Good evening. Welcome all to a joint meeting of the Planning Commission, the Pros Commission, and the CAC. And the first order of business. No salute to the flag, huh?
If you would like to, we can. Not. If you would like to, we can. Not all commissions do that, so.
Really?
Yes.
Well, we'll do it tonight, and I'll have you lead it, Jennifer.
I can do the first three words. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start the meeting as we customarily do with, well, we should do roll call. Let's do roll call. This will take a while.
Yep. You ready? Okay. Chair Barnett.
Here.
Vice Chair Dombach.
Here.
Commissioner Barbos.
He's away.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner O'Gorman Jenkins.
Here.
Commissioner Willers.
Here.
Commissioner Wyrick.
Here.
Commissioner Nugent.
Here.
Thank you. That's all for Planning Commission. For Climate Action, do we have Chair Morrell?
Here.
Vice Chair Conlon?
Here.
Commissioner Heinerman?
Here.
Commissioner Nickel?
Here.
Commissioner Ward?
Here.
Youth Member Clements?
Here.
And that's all. Thank you.
For Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, Commissioner Cullinan.
Here.
Youth Member Mellinger.
Here.
Commissioner Mizuraka.
Here.
Commissioner Tolbert.
Here.
Chair Donnelly.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First order of business is comments from the public. If there's anyone here who would like to make a comment about items not on the agenda, now's your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll go on to the next order of business, which is the consent calendar. We've got, as part of our agenda packet, the minutes from our regular, the joint meeting minutes of our previous meeting. And I'd like to hear unless you have changes and would like to discuss it, I would entertain a motion to approve.
We will also need a motion from each commission. So we could do Planning Commission first.
All right, will someone from the Planning Commission like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular Planning Commission meeting of January 23rd.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll.
Sorry, just to clarify, that is from the special joint commission meeting. Sorry, the text is wrong.
I'll amend my.
Ha. Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Nugent.
Approved.
Commissioner O'Gorman Jenkins. Aye. Commissioner O'Neill. Oh, sorry, she's gone. Commissioner Willers.
Yes.
Commissioner Wyrick.
Yes.
Vice Chair Dombach.
Yes.
Chair Barnett.
Aye.
The motion was carried 6-2, I think.
Okay, now the next commission chair will preside.
Thank you. We will need a motion from one of the members of the Climate Action Commission with respect to the motion on the floor.
So moved, as in sync with the previous motion.
Beautifully done. Is there a second from our team? Amber.
Good.
Thank you, Amber. Let's go through a roll call. Natalie, thank you.
Commissioner Heinerman.
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon.
Yes.
Chair Morrell.
Aye.
The motion was carried 5-0.
Okay, and finally, the last commission, Pros.
Pros Commission, and would one of our commissioners make the motion to adopt the minutes as so stated?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Roll call.
please.
Commissioner Cullinan,
Here.
Commissioner Misraka,
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert. Yes. Chair Donnelly.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-1-1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we're on to the main item for tonight, which is the presentation of the city council goals by city manager David Guhin, which I guess we will cover, and then we'll get into the specifics of our tree plan and discussion.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Again, David Guhin, City Manager. And first, I want to start with. I've got a
Natalie, can
question.
you please push the
Oh, thank
podium?
you. First, I want to start with thanking all of you for your volunteer time. I know this is a big body of work that you each do in your boards and commissions. We can't do it without you. As I was just speaking at another event and talking about how we, as a small city, everybody pitches in to make things happen here. So I thank you, I appreciate it, and acknowledge the work that you do. I do want to, I know you have a big topic to talk about tonight, so I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I wanted to come to each board and commission after the city council approved the city council goals, just to talk about what they did. If you haven't seen, I know many of you were participating in that process and were there and saw how it played out, but I want to make sure everyone hears that and also let you know how I'm going to use these goals. So the way the goals work are the city council sets these goals broadly. They're big picture goals. It essentially is my guidance document for the year. So I use these goals for everything we do in terms of setting budgets, setting priorities, looking at resources, working with the boards and commissions, making sure we're all aligned to try to accomplish these goals so we don't run off in 10 million different directions. So these are really important. There's something that I think this will be a typical rhythm that will go on every year. At the beginning of the year, we'll just set goals, we'll come back, we'll talk about them, and then align what the boards and commissions are working on to get there. So the first goal that came up was housing, which is probably no surprise. This is a goal that was a priority last year. A lot of work's been started on that, and we're going to continue that. It's important that the council express their commitment to housing, both from a political standpoint, but from a public perception as well. A lot of people are watching cities, understanding kind of do these cities really want housing? Do we want to invest in these communities? And I think the city council's done an excellent job saying we do want housing, and housing at all levels. That's at low income, missing middle, workforce, and market rate housing that we're looking for. We also are looking at our processes. So we do know we play a part as a city government in terms of housing, our roles, our process, where we impact time, certainty, and cost, which affects development of any type. So we have to look at our processes, look at streamlining, look at how we can move things through in an efficient manner, and also do it in a fair way. The other thing we're looking at is incentives. So incentivizing certain products like low-income housing. We can incentivize, we can reduce fees, we can do different things like that that encourage a type of product that we don't see happening and that does cost more to produce. We also want to look at various funding options. There's a lot of interesting funding options out there that cities are going after from the state. There's a measure that's going to be on the 2024 ballot, the BAFA measure, which is the Bay Area Housing Financing Authority, I think it is. But there's potentially millions of dollars that can come into Sonoma County. That money will then get distributed to the cities. And so we have to be prepared. We have to get ourselves aligned to make sure we have our processes in place, our policies in place, our systems in place, work with developers, identify projects so we can get that money and get it in the ground as quick as possible and start getting units developed. So a lot of this stuff is the behind the scenes work and that we have to get done that the Planning Commission is working on and every board and commissions are helping with. And finally, support for our unhoused population is key. So that was a goal last year. We're continuing that. We put that into housing this year. For example, we just initiated and activated our emergency warming center today. So that'll go live tomorrow night. We're expecting some wind chills tomorrow on Saturday morning. That will be in the low 30s. And so we want to make sure that our most vulnerable population has a place to go, is protected, is heated, and has a safe place for the next few days. So we'll have that open on Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. And so those are things that we want to continue to do and support our nonprofits like SOS, HAS, and have caseworkers on the street to help our population. Second goal was economic development and revenue stewardship. We obviously can't do anything without revenue and making sure that we manage our finances correctly. Part of that is attracting, retaining, and diversifying our business community, making sure that we do have a viable business community that pays into our property tax. Those are our three big sources of income that keeps the city moving, that allows us to do everything we're talking about. So making sure that we're doing that in a sustainable way, making sure that we're diversifying, making sure that we're working with people, not against each other. So that's something that we got to focus on. And then also looking at enhanced revenue services. So if we want to enhance our services and support for the community, we have to identify another revenue source to come and to help augment that. And so we'll be looking at potentially a ballot measure in 2024 to capture some additional sales tax to try to keep that money locally before it goes out to a regional tax or some other thing. So we'll be talking more about that over the next few months, and I'll talk about that probably the next item. Park and recreations and community services is another goal. We don't have a park and recs department here at the city, and so that's something that is done on an ad hoc basis. So we have public works crews jumping in and helping with parks and responding to issues, but we don't have a central place to coordinate and connect the dots between all the environmental initiatives we want to do, our parks, our plaza, events, the cemeteries that we own, to recreation programs that we work with our nonprofits and all the agreements we have. So there's a lot there that can be done and a lot more we can leverage if we can pull all that together and actually take a proactive and strategic approach to our parks and rec initiatives. And part of that last part there is really and we talked about the tax measure, but we do need to have a revenue source to make that happen. But we need to prioritize collaboration. Again, we can't do this alone, so we do rely on our nonprofits to carry out a lot of our rec programs, a lot of our work in our stewardship programs. So we want to foster those, grow those, and make sure that those are well maintained. Climate mitigation and adaptation made it to is one of our 5 goals this year. The Climate Commission came up with a number of strategies that were approved by the Commission and then brought to the City Council and were approved. So this action item here essentially says to implement those. So it puts it as a priority. Again, as I go back to the beginning of what I said before, this is going to drive how I set up the budget and how I work through the budget process so we can start to fund some of these initiatives to try to see some results in this coming year. So there's a goal to have positions known as a climate action leader, implement those strategies, and then address a number of issues like transportation, and in bold letters and capital letters is trees. And I think that's what you're here to do tonight. And that was highlighted in pretty much every meeting we've been in is trees, trees, trees. So thank you for the work you're doing on that tonight. We've already kickstarting that right off the bat, so appreciate that. And finally, the last one was annexation unification. And this one had the most conversation at the council meeting, if you watched that meeting. At this point, there's been a desire to explore what the options are. And at that meeting, basically, the direction was that I would be coming back to the city council with a work plan on what those first steps might look like. That means doing community outreach and just understanding what the interest is out there, what are the issues. A lot of times with annexation, there's a misunderstanding of what annexation is and what it's not. And so I think there's a huge education component that has to happen, a community sentiment to understand what people are interested in. There's a lot of things we can do without annexing that we currently do right now, like homeless services throughout the valley. There's a lot of shared services we can do with JPAs and joint power agreements. And there's certain things that only annexation can achieve, such as representation on a council or body. But we're making steps towards that. I think we saw just recently our boards and commissions have all moved to 7 members. So we have 2 at-large members now on each board and commission, and those can be the 2 additional members can be from outside the city and the valley. So we're starting to show that kind of bring in the rest of the valley to our process, because we do know we're all tied together. So a lot of items here, but the next step for this is really on me to bring back a work plan to the council to understand what the resources it would take, the time, and what we would actually do before we make any steps further on this issue. So that was probably the most talked about at the council meeting. So those are the 5 goals that council came up. So we do have a hefty work plan ahead of us this year. It is an exciting list. It's a great list. I think we're already making some headway on some of these, and again, all of you are part of these. So as you're going through your boards and commissions and working on projects, I'll just be asking, please keep these in mind. I'll be doing that to staff as well. So when we bring items to council, I want to tie it back to these goals to make sure that we're still moving forward in this direction that the council would like us to go. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. I believe there are some questions.
Well, I just have a comment that I was going to do after your presentation. So why don't I'll do it after you.
That's all I have. Yes,
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to. Yeah.
The comment I want to make is that I thought the minutes were accurate, but I would love it if they had quite a bit more detail. There were more detail in the minutes.
So unfortunately, the number didn't pop up for the second item.
So the second item is the discussion on the trees. So this first item is just our city manager presenting on the goals.
I don't mean the agenda, I meant the minutes.
Oh, from the
Minutes
previous
being taken
vote?
during these meetings, yeah.
Well,
okay.
the decision was made a number of years ago, which I didn't like, and I wasn't on the council when the decision was made, for minutes to be action minutes. The era of detailed written minutes summarizing discussions and points of view by individuals at the meetings, unfortunately, has receded into the pages of history. Now, between the action minutes and the videotapes of the meetings, that's what we're limited to.
I have a comment that I'd like to offer, that looking at the 5 goals this evening and their importance, all 5 touch critically on the climate issue, which of course is one of the goals. Housing, and especially housing for people who work here but can't live here and drive here, is an important part of our vehicle miles traveled and the reduction thereof for climate. Economic development and revenue stewardship gets us into thinking about a climate-smart tourist destination, a vibrant business community without ruining vehicle miles traveled and the whole issue of climate. Parks and Rec, of course, with respect to trees and climate and what we're here for tonight. Climate mitigation by definition, and annexation comes in specifically with the grants. We have Uncle Bill and Uncle Ira. That's the 2 federal laws that I lovingly call with a brother and an uncle name. And so much of that federal money, and indeed much of the state money as it passes through, is defined by disadvantaged communities. We don't do too well at the city level. We do brilliantly as we bring in the Springs. So even earlier, well before LEFCO approved annexation, climate action jointly with grants with our friends in the Springs becomes critical. Thank you, David.
Any other comments or questions? I just have one, which had to do with the revenue stewardship. And there wasn't a lot of discussion at that meeting about it. I do feel that there are a number of opportunities that I hope you will examine, and not least of which are strategies to increase the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. While I recognize that there's some bond measures on the ballot and that the city has pinned its hopes to the passage of them, there's no guarantee that they're going to pass. I think the public is frankly getting weary of bond indebtedness, and the growing deficit of the state brings into question, for people who are perceptive and paying attention, that it isn't an endless fund of money out there where what we're doing is saddling the future with debt. So I'm not assuming that some of these measures will pass. That notwithstanding, what we do have in place is an Affordable Housing Trust Fund that, if we can build the revenues for that quickly, can enable the city to become a more active player in negotiations with nonprofit housing developers, who frankly are the ones who are going to build this housing. As you and I both know, because you've got plenty of experience in this, is that cities or jurisdictions have to prime the pump with these developers. You have to come to the negotiations with something to put on the table, i.e. money or land which represents money. And the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is something that we've got. It's formed, it's receiving funds, and it could receive more. And so I'm hoping that in the analysis of increase in revenues, can be a lot of attention paid to directing increased revenues to that fund. One of the questions I'd asked of city management in the past, no longer here to verify their answer, was whether or not charitable donations to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund are tax deductible. If so, and if the answer to that question is yes, if a philanthropic entity with millions or perhaps billions of dollars, wishes to put some money in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, is it tax deductible? And if the answer is yes, does that not imply that the city could more actively publicize the value of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and solicit donations to that fund in order to grow it quickly? I noticed the other day that the Catalyst Fund gave $100,000 to the Sonoma Collaborative. That's fine. That's lovely. Sonoma Collaborative is going to use it in some fashion. I don't know how. But if that $100,000 had gone into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I know specifically how it could be used, and it could be used to prime that pump. So I'm hoping that the city, either through redirection of the TOT, renegotiation of the TID contract, which is currently generating $1 million a year for the TID, although when it was started 10 or 15 years ago, it was a mere $400,000, which seemed like a bounty of funds for promotional purposes only. Well, now it's grown to $1 million. Maybe it shouldn't be 2% that goes to the TID, but it should be 1%, and the 1% that gets eliminated can be added to the TOT, and that go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Just as we're putting 1% of the TOT into that now, it could become 2%. There are strategies to grow it, and I hope that's going to be part of your analysis. And I hope you all realize what a superbly professional city manager that we have in place. I'm not going to spend my time comparing him to the other city managers we've had, but I am very, very pleased to have David at the helm at City Hall, and it's very encouraging to me to have someone with the energy and creativity and experience he's got. And so if you haven't had a chance to get to know David and stop into City Hall and take 10 minutes to talk to him and introduce yourself, I urge you to do that. He's a lovely guy, and he's going to be a great asset to us, and we want to keep him here forever. So, we need to make friends. Sorry for taking so long.
No, thank you. And I have an open door policy, so please, I would love to chat with anybody if you do have questions or thoughts or just want to talk. I'm happy to do that. And I appreciate that, Chair Barnett. There are a number of funding sources out there, a number of ways we can crack this nut, and you're absolutely right. I mean, looking at all these different existing contracts, existing agreements that have been made, how we do that. Everyone has its nuances. The tax write-off, as you mentioned, there are some nuances to that, but there are ways around that. So there's pathways to this. So I think we do look at all of those scenarios, and nothing's off the table. And I think you hit it on the head. We can't put all our eggs in one basket, especially with a bond up to the voters. So we will do that. Yep.
Others? Okay, thank you, David.
Yep, thank you. Thank you so much. Good luck tonight.
Yes, Jennifer.
We want to open for public comment.
Is there any public comment on City Manager Guhin's report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next order of business, and I will turn it over to Jennifer at this point.
I'll stand. And he ran. All right. Well, thank you guys again. Sorry about the little snafu on the agenda. But so this is item 3.2, the discussion on our prioritization of our key areas to present to City Council in regards to, as he presented, all caps trees. And so what you have in your packet was the meeting notes that we took from the last meeting, and then we applied kind of how we saw those different notes and simplified them into our prioritization topics. And we had 3 topics, presented those to Chair Barnett, Chair Morrell, and Chair Donnelly, and we discussed them and discussed how we would prioritize those things. And some of them is just because certain things need to come before other items. So when we get to those, I'll point those out. What I did not put very beginning is whether or not some funding from the general fund is required. Some of the comments that I did put was that we were going to be looking for funding. So here are the priorities. I'm just going to highlight the ones that were condensed. And so in education, we're looking at updating material on our website and increasing that web presence and education around that. The second one is to what we called what's suitable where. It's something that we were talking about is what do we want to plant? What kind of trees do we need that would be good for our community? And then where should those go? And those would not be in 3-foot landscape mediums. Also, how do we care for these trees as well as plant them and get them to actually take hold? And then lastly, just community outreach and education efforts, having that interaction with the public. One of the ideas that came up at the last meeting is a tree scavenger hunt. One of the jurisdictions I lived in before had a huge Arbor Day celebration, and where we had huge tree plantings. So on the right-hand side is the additional comment about when we would start. So this is looking to start in basically now, but fiscal year 24-25 and ongoing. I would recommend creating an ad hoc committee to help with these education opportunities and creating that material that would go on the website to share. Around ad hoc committees, our city attorney is still looking into how we can join different ad hoc committees from the different commissions into one. And we do think that as long as there's not a majority of any one commission on that there can be representation from the different commissions together. What there cannot be is representation from a member of the public. So an ad hoc committee can only be those that are on an actual body. If a member of the public is participating in an ad hoc meeting, that meeting needs to be actually agendized as a Brown Act meeting. So just, I learned that last week. So just educating you all as well. The next item that we're looking at is planting and maintaining the trees. So the first one is tree planting and maintenance strategy, and to, again, develop those materials to assist our homeowners. And those would be then provided to the trees group on the web materials and things that would be added. So this could be an ad hoc committee that's more focused, like with an arborist and others that are really educated around our trees. And then the one that's about education could be anybody. You don't necessarily need to know all the details of planting and maintaining trees, but you maybe are really good about community engagement or how to write things that read well on a website. The second item is to pursue funding for implementation and planting of new trees. Some of those ideas came across as the Cool Corridor and the Milwaukee Forest. And so this again would start in 24-25 and ongoing. Again, I would recommend creating an ad hoc committee and to work with the ad hoc committee that's on education in the sense of providing them the information, not as joining. This one we would need to look for grants and or general funds to actually do the planting of trees themselves. We would not necessarily have that money readily available. So that would be a request that we would need to make. For enforcement of replacement, we can start that now, but really focus in 24-25 with a plan on how we want to enforce our current code. How do we utilize code enforcement or staff to go out there and make sure that the trees that are identified for removal and that need a replanting are actually occurring. So building it into our actual tree removal process to make sure that they're getting done. But we need to look at that. And it may be some modifications to the code need to be made. That would be small, nothing a major rewrite or anything like that. But we would then modify the code as a whole after we get our urban forest management plan. So we're going to talk about that on the next slide. But for right now, just focusing on kind of that low level. What can we do right now? Later on, so I'm looking at fiscal year 25-26. So again, after the completion of the urban forest management plan, we would need to look for grants and general funds. One of the ideas that came up was to do plant appraisals. I recently found a really great program in another city that actually has, like, you can select the tree and it tells you its value. It was really interesting, GIS. It's here in California. Well, I can't remember what town it was now, but I have it saved. And then incentives for planting and maintenance of heritage trees on private property. And so again, creating a more robust heritage tree program, and then how do we incentivize that? Again, you would need funding to do that. So the last set of priorities is around the regulations and policies. So we talked a lot about some of the minutia details, and so this is kind of like the big picture idea. The first thing that we need to do is to update the tree inventory and the canopy study. That tells us what we have and what we really need. So that would be immediate. We would look for asking for a budget request right now at our mid-year budget in fiscal year 23-24. This also is because it is identified in our goals for 2024, it would be supported. And so with that, if this is the prioritization for tonight, this would be something that I would immediately go and find some costs for a scope of work to complete. And that way we can go and do a mid-year budget request for that work to start before the next budget cycle. The second, which would be in the next budget cycle, so FY 24-25, and so those, I think everybody knows our budget cycle starts July 1st. And so we're right now getting ready to do the mid-year budget. A little late, but it's mid-year. And then we'll do the next year's budget in May. So again, starting next year, look at doing the urban forest management plan. That kind of sets the big picture again of all of our policies and how we want to move forward with urban forest management. And then create that city's tree list. What's the species, the location size, if it's native, low water usage, those types of things we talked about at the last meeting. If I remember correctly, I think it was Santa Rosa with the master gardeners from Sonoma State had created their new list that actually identified all those species and really was focusing on what's native and low water. So looking to do something similar to that, if that's what the goal of that management plan is. And then looking to start the following 25-26 is really, could start earlier, but I'm planning it out farther, is a tree removal and replacement policy and ordinance to really robustly look at ours and change it, make sure that we're defining what's significant tree. I've heard that discussion in different commissions as well as sitting on pros is if this specific tree is really significant. There's some newer trees maybe, or a tree that really isn't appropriate for our climate, things like that. So that was my comment on that one. So it's not just size and location, but also the species itself. Also looking at updating our heritage tree ordinance as a whole. It hasn't been touched, I want to say, since the 70s, I think was what I said the other day. And then our safety and enforcement policy around trees. I don't know how, but we'll figure it out together. My thought is, how do we get PG&Es to stop mutilating our trees? I know it's a pipe dream, but it's a good dream. But that's what, around safety and enforcement, that would be more on the safety side of things. And so that is my summary. So the other items that we had talked about that are kind of in play already is an arborist contract position with the city, and we would send out the RFPs soon. I'm already working with Public Works on getting that done, and then we would put additional funds in the budget on an ongoing basis starting next fiscal year. And then also our sustainability coordinator retired. He was a part-time contract position, so looking to make sure that that position continues on and looking at kind of crafting that, a little bit more. And then lastly, we had identified lots of potential partners to do this work with, because as we all know, we can't do this alone. And we also, we're a very small staff. So looking to reach out to those that are already doing or have done to provide guidance and assistance. So the next steps are to recommend moving forward with this prioritization. I would take it to City Council and say, kind of, this is our way that we're proposing to move forward as 3 joint commissions, and we'll be presenting at that mid-year budget request for that specific tree inventory and canopy. And then we would come forward with a budget request for the urban forest management plan and the tree list with that for the fiscal year 24-25. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Let's start with any questions for Jennifer that any of the commission members may have. Yes, Donna?
Thank you. Thanks for the prioritization. With regard to raising funds for, I think it was the second prioritization, if we can go back to that, grants for planting trees, things like that. I'm just curious if the city could legally ask people to donate trees. So, for instance, maybe there's an Arbor Day and you can donate it in someone's name. Is that something that you could explore? It may take some grant money or, some finances to explore that possibility.
Right. So it would probably be a donation to a nonprofit if there was some kind of wish for a write-off or something like that, a tax. They would need to do donation to a 501c3, but then it could be planted on city property.
Okay, or coordinated through an Arbor Day or something like that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just thinking that since UC Davis was the Master Gardener Program school, if we might reach out to them as a potential partner.
Sure. It's an ongoing list. So if you guys want to share others, I'm more than open to learning more.
Yes.
Thank you, Jennifer. Looking at this table that summarizes the priority goals, my sense is that in terms of ranking these priorities, that we ought to start with the one at the bottom, regulation policies, where we start with the tree inventory, a tree canopy assessment of the city, and then develop best practices going forward. And that would then inform the education system and the enforcement policies. But I was looking at the Fremont Urban Forest Management Plan that you circulated, and they say right off the bat, the roadmap that creates a shared vision for the future of a tree canopy, the first step is to assess all the trees in the streets and parks, and then go on and assess the canopy and look at equity gaps and all sorts of climate-related issues. So it seems to me that that's the fundable thing. Fremont had a web-based tree plotter that they used to do it, so there must be some, and John probably knows some of these different web assistants that could do that. But it just seems that would flow better if we get a forest management plan with all the best practices going forward, and then develop the education process.
Okay, I'm not sure if that was a question or a comment, but that's fine. Did you have any response to that, Jennifer?
So I would say that updating the tree inventory and canopy study and starting their urban forest management plan, we could do, as those being the main steps for the next year, and then fill in. But if there's interest right now of trying to provide a little bit more guidance, it doesn't require any funding, it just requires time. And so we could start, right? It won't be robust, maybe, until we get their urban forest management plan, but we can start developing tools, and we can still celebrate Arbor Day this year and, things like that.
Let me just take a moment to direct the commission members' attention to the meeting notes, and what Jennifer has done, if you'll look at it closely, is that each of the separate items in the meeting notes have been assigned to a goal number. So key trees to address sequestration has been assigned to goal R3, which is the regulation and policies priority. And so as you go through this list, and it goes on for 4 or 5 pages, this is essentially reflects all of the ideas that came out during our last meeting, and they're all now tied to this priority list through an assignation to one of the 3 sections that Jennifer has identified. So I don't think it makes sense to go through all of our meeting notes item by item to see where they're captured, because I think we can rely on Jennifer to have appropriately assigned each one to a category. But I did want to direct the attention to the commission members that that part of the process has taken place. We don't have to replicate that tonight. And that said, if there's something in the meeting notes that you feel is not correctly assigned, you should bring that up. Or, because that was just one meeting and one discussion, if there's something that you feel was not brought up during our discussion at the last meeting, now's the time to bring it up and we can add it to the list. Now, we'll go on with other questions. We're not going to get into comments yet. Get into other questions for Jennifer. Any questions about her approach or the logic of it? Yes, Tom.
Thank you. And that's helpful. I'm glad you pointed that out to me because I noticed it, but I didn't realize it was all the way through. So pretty comprehensive cross mapping for us. So thank you. And the example you gave was that second bullet, key trees to address sequestration. And I was asking, I'd like to ask about the scope of the inventory and the consultant scope of work that you're thinking about. Are we anticipating doing a carbon inventory of the trees too? It strikes me that that's a big ask of some types of consultants. And if we did include that as a scope, as within the scope, it could skew who is qualified to do the work for us.
Would you like to explain a little more
Sure.
about what's behind that idea? Because I'm not sure everybody is familiar with it.
So as I look at the way you've put this list together, which is great, we have, coming up with an inventory of the trees we have now, what their canopy is like, and then a prospective look at the list of species, their location, a suitability for certain locations, and all of that. If we leave the quantitative assessment of their existing carbon value out at this early inventory stage, we could skip over and not necessarily know how much carbon is there in the city right now and what our potential is, what our target potential is for our urban forest management plan. So for me, from my perspective as kind of a quantitative analyst around this stuff, that's the first question that comes to mind for me. And maybe we get creative and the sustainability coordinator takes on this responsibility. I'm just speculating now as to how we might answer that question, but your thoughts about that.
I mean, it's definitely something that, so I would first put out with my request for proposals is that these are all of our goals, which includes carbon sequestration. So, looking at all these things, see what somebody proposes. And we could obviously put in there, these are the key factors that we're looking for in the sense of what we want in your scope. Tell us how you're going to do it, and then select accordingly. And we could, again, this ad hoc that would, that could be created around this could be part of that selection group. So again, with proposals, we want to make sure that we are putting out there what we want so that we're getting equal proposals back.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? If not, before we get into the general discussion and comment, I want to see if there's anyone in the public who would like to ask a question or make a comment on the presentation.
Yeah, so
Come on up. Jennifer will step away from the mic just in a second.
can you push the podium button, please? So I think John has a request. John, did you have a request for Cedra to have a little longer than 3 minutes?
Yes, I did, and I think David also said he would.
I'm not using a timer.
Okay.
We don't have that many people clamoring to speak tonight that we have to use the timer. Don't
I
worry.
better use a timer though, so let me get mine up here.
But do give your name if you would.
Okay. Hi, my name is Cedra Nathan, and I really do need to thank John for asking me to come in. I also need to thank David, who got me into this whole quagmire in the first place with having me come and give comments at the Climate Commission a couple times, which then introduced me to Jennifer, who I had come talk to the Valley of the Moon Garden Club, and all 100, and essentially provided those comments to all 165 members of the Garden Club, which represents, across the valley about 100, almost 2% of the city of Sonoma. And then ultimately also Patricia, who's talked to me about having cemetery become park lands and open space. And so really, I need to thank all of you people, because that's a lot of what I've been interested in, what I've dedicated my life to, is thinking about corridors and open space and green space and how that builds ecological and economic resilience. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit when I've talked to about with general plan updates too. So this is Nathanson Creek. What you'll see here is that these kind of green linkages and cool corridors attracts people to them. It gets people out of their cars. It's safe passageway. You've talked a lot about canopy cover and what is the canopy cover. There's actually this is from the USDA canopy mapping project. This is done for all areas in California, and this is used as the baseline to identify where trees should be prioritized if you're going to do canopy coverage. The Sonoma has on average 23% average percent canopy. We have what's considered sparse tree canopy coverage. We are generally in the 15 to 24% range. You really want to be, for our ecosystem, the kind of ecosystem that we have, which is a rolling woodland vegetation, about 30% is a good benchmark across the city. So David's absolutely correct when he talks about we need to protect the trees that we have right now because of their carbon uptake. Bigger trees take in more greenhouse gas, but we're already in deficit. And so this map shows you exactly where we're in deficit. The northern boundary helps up our percent coverage. Those blue areas are in the 15 to 24%. There's a whole community of people. We're part of the Relief Network of California. They've been around since 1990. And I like to talk about the Relief Petaluma group because everyone gets very excited about the money they've had and the money that's come in from the Inflation Reduction Act. They're like the 20-year overnight success group, right? So they've been working for decades on trying to get funding in, and now we know who they are. This is a tree planting project. But they really, and this network of group of people, work really hard to take best management practices and science ideas and do translation of that into how you plant trees. What are the best ways to do that? Now, Petaluma is a little bit of a cautionary tale for us. The reason why they got into this is they had a driving force in their efforts. They were in bad shape. They lost a lot of their valuable attributes and canopy cover, and they had Highway 101 going right through the middle of them. So they had huge pollution efforts, they had inequity issues, and that's what coalesced them. We don't want to get into that kind of bad shape. We want to take what is already something that is a fairly nice environment and build on that, get better than what we already are. But that's part of what drove them, is because they were in dire straits, really. So you've talked about how do you assess trees, what are the trees that should be there, what are the best management practices. There's a gold standard out there, this urban forestry management manuals, and you see that kind of in the middle of this slide, the Urban Tree Monitoring Field Guide and the Urban Tree Monitoring Resource Guide. Those are documents that you can see on the left-hand slide are the pages of the field data collection. It shows you how to do diameter, breast height measurement. But all that now has been translated into these high-tech tools that are computer-based and field-based GPS, and all the trees are now geo-coded, they're tagged, everything's GIS-based. And this contributes to a really important economic tool. These are green-collar jobs. So it's not just about having green space. It's about attracting new economic opportunities to Sonoma as well. So this shows you the tree plotter inventory. That's what you were talking about, was tree plotter. And this will automatically show you what the carbon elements are for individual trees, what the air quality improvements are, what the stormwater savings would be across individual trees. That data inventory is already in there. And so we know that the climate is changing, and so they are automatically updating that data. For example, Valley Oaks, Quercus lobata, had always been a big winner for us. That's one of our native oak trees. They're struggling in climate, this new warming climate. And so now they're starting to shut down. And so we're starting to rethink, because we know this valley is going to increase 5 degrees. We need to shift our tree palette to accommodate the future that's already here. These trees last 200 years. So we have to plan for that, not with what has historically been here, but what's going to be here in the future in terms of climate. And it's already here, actually. So what I was mentioning is that it's both an economic and ecological resilience that you're planning for, and these tools exist. They're already there at your fingertips, basically. The other thing is that I want to mention now is that cool green corridors, well, that was that. Well, anyways, the point is that they foster equity.
Don't rush. You're doing fine.
Oh, really?
There's
All right.
there's no time limit.
All right. Well, let me go into this. This is your unequal tree distribution. This gives you the equity, the tree equity distribution. And areas that have less green on the map indicate poor tree equity. And this is the confluence of economic factors, education, health, and your vulnerable populations, both your older and younger people, combined with where you don't have good tree coverage. And so the areas that have less green show the inadequate tree canopy cover combined with those other areas. And so the 5 West connector would be an excellent place to think about stormwater management combined with a cool green corridor that would create safe passage, along with that, you can see up along the top, which is where we have the Sonoma bike path, which gets very hot in the summertime. So street trees are just absolutely essential for walking and bike appeal. And research shows that you get a 20% increase in ridership boost with dedicated bike paths. Now, in terms of greenhouse gas absorption, transportation is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gas. It's going to be hard for you to find a single tree or a group of trees that is going to be as effective as getting people out of their cars for those 5 miles and less trips that are the biggest contributor to, or the biggest group of car travel trips that we have in Sonoma, as getting people out of their car, which is what cool green corridors do. So these are some examples of cool green corridors and some award-winning examples from people right around us. So Santa Rosa, California, by investing in bicycle-friendly communities, they're also investing in their businesses. So this is not something that's at odd with business. This is actually helping business. And Montreal, Canada, which is where I also have a home, they have green strips where they're planting trees that are as a buffer between cars and bicycles. When I first got there, I was very confused. I kept seeing all these feral children on their own in the streets, riding around. I thought, where are their parents? How are they doing this? And it's because they have safe corridors for kids, allowing them to get to schools. So you didn't have car congestion around schools. You didn't have idling cars. And you had all these kids that were young on the streets, but safe. So this is the planning map that you guys have. And so what I'm trying to show you is that your site selection can be strategic. You can have co-benefits where you enhance your current circulation elements by looking at the desired paths that people have, the hidden green paths that people have, and HOA-linked green paths, which I've talked to Jennifer about, is all these green paths that you guys don't even have on your maps because you can't see them, but they're there, and you link them up with your known green paths, with first prioritizing freedom of movement and ensuring that we have a permeable city. And so you want to have safety for schools and medical access and help your vulnerable populations. But by doing that, you create this sort of what's called an emerald necklace, linking that. Because if you just have things that dead end, that actually doesn't do anything for your population. It doesn't get a permeable city for them. And these what's called emerald necklace designs go back to Olmsted. So here you can see this population of visitors. The thing that they really want is to be away from urban congestion. They come multiple times. Those are the biggest tourists that we have. So we want to leverage off of our natural TOT dollar infrastructure. We want to work in harmony with that, as David had just mentioned. And so there's that same emerald necklace I showed in the last design. And you want to continue building up that, because these are the loops that Sonoma Adventure takes people on, or Wine Country Adventure takes people on. I've gone through and asked them, what are the assets you really need for green infrastructure? And it turns out it's the same assets that we really need for residents that have kids. It's the same assets that we really need for our older population. It's the same assets that residents want who are already gardeners in the community. It's the same pattern and design. So we can look at our historic legacy. This goes back to the City Beautiful movement, which was 150 years ago. Frederick Olmsted is the person who devised the idea of emerald necklaces. Now we have emerald necklaces all over the place, in Boston to Seattle. We should have one here. You can see the National Mall right there. That was designed by Frederick Olmsted. Our city plaza looks awfully similar to that, doesn't it? Because it was generated as part of this legacy of the City Beautiful movement. And so we should build on that with these innovations going forward in a climate, with the challenges that we have with climate these days. And it takes the number of people that invested in the quality of life 100 plus in the last turn of the century, can be an inspiration for people like you to take heart that these are things that build the character that we're also very proud of today that we want to maintain. But it takes people like you now to build on that and use that vision going forward. So how do we do this? We can work with partners who have a vested interest in having tourism and leverage our regulatory policy by asking people to put in things. That's a byway right there around the hotel between Whole Foods and the Krug Center. That's an easement, a park that's part of their setback easements. Just ask them to do it as part of their regulatory requirements. They want people to enjoy their tourism time here. Go for the low-hanging fruit. All right, there you go. That's my whole spiel.
Thank you very much. That was inspiring, and I am always inspired by the talent and intelligence we have here in the community. So thank you very much. Any other member of the public want to come up and make a comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public part and bring it back to the commission members for discussion and comment.
Question of the presenter. Can you make your presentation available online?
I don't know where online, and you have to ask Jennifer.
I mean, I can provide it to you. I have it on my computer, and I can provide it to all the commissioners as minutes.
I'll give you the one with the corrected notes, Jennifer.
And perhaps, since you have a relationship with the Chair Morrell, and also John, perhaps this can be added to the Sonoma Ecology Center website as an additional resource or something.
I have a marginal influence on that action item, so I'll see what I can do
Okay.
once I receive the material from Cedra. And thank you, Cedra, for a fabulous synthesis of so much that's going on here.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you too for that. Exceeded our expectations and really gave us a lot to think about. And Cedra gave me an interesting bio, which I won't take because she has extensive interdisciplinary scholarly work in academic fields, economics and ecology and plant ecology. She worked with the Nature Conservancy for a while. She's just says, among other things, that she likes to raise interdisciplinary approaches to contemporary multifaceted challenges, demonstrating her holistic systems thinking approach to problem solving and steadfast dedication to addressing complex issues from diverse perspectives. So that's just what we're looking for, an urban forest management plan here, and now we have a nice, robust, diverse perspectives to really see how we can think more broadly about this. She is also, in fact, Chair Barnett last time said he believed in the interrelatedness things of living systems, and so this is a powerful resource in that regard. And Cedra is also, since she moved here 3 years ago, is on the strategic planning group for the Center of Environmental Inquiry at Sonoma State University. She's on the Garden Park Advisory Group and the president of the the Valley of the Moon Garden Club, which we've listed as one of our potential partners in this tree project. So thanks again, Cedar. We look forward to working with you.
And John, I have a question for Jennifer. As we move this evening, potentially at least, toward the creation of one or more ad hoc groupings, can non-commissioners or citizens of the city be on these, or they're not allowed? Here this evening, that's not going to work. under
It's
the
not
Brown Act,
allowed under the Brown
without
Act.
agendizing and all the excitement that brings us.
Correct. Well, with all the ad hocs that the different commissions that we've been creating lately, I will put together kind of a guide and kind of like the rules around it for outside participation, and work with our city attorney to just clarify everything so that we can stay above board.
Can I add that we now have 3 new openings on the Parks and Recreation Commission. We are 5 members, and the council wants us to go to 7, and one of our commissioners just resigned to move to Puerto Rico for a while. So we'll have 3 potential members, and I hope, Cedra, you would consider possibly becoming a commissioner.
Okay, let's return to the comments portion of the meeting in reaction to what's been presented so far, and I would encourage any of you who have comment or reactions to share them with the group. Yes, Patricia.
Apologize for not being here and being able to make more comments last time on my own. But I noticed one thing that's missing from the list, and it's light pollution. Light pollution is I'm reading, is a human-made alteration of outdoor light levels from those occurring naturally. What are the effects? Light pollution disrupts wildlife, impacts human health, wastes money and energy, contributes to climate change, and blocks our view of the universe. There is a movement, it seems afoot in a lot of construction, that they're lighting our night sky. Years ago, the city went to great expense to change all our street lights so they were dark sky compliant. And now we have a reversal of that with people lighting trees all night, 365 days a year. So I really think that that is something that we, the disruption to, you know, you were talking about protecting birds, where you're confusing them because they fly at night to migrate. There's all kinds of instances where it would be important to include this in climate change and in this tree, the tree effort too. And I think that that is something that perhaps can simply be put in our new development code and general plan. I hope it can. And I would also like to say that I'm glad that Arbor Day is coming back, because it was always a big deal. Here in Sonoma, it was well reported in the newspaper, and they planted a small tree because trees establish better for the long term if they are started small. So I know that the effort is to have instant, but that isn't necessarily good for the tree. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in? Now's your chance. Oh, Mr. Willers.
Slow to the hand raising. I was giving other people an opportunity. But I want to kind of echo what Cedar just gave us as a presentation. And, you know, it's good to think about trees and capital letters, and it's the primary focus. But unless we integrate the system of putting trees into our community, we're not going to have a viable urban tree forest. And what I mean by that is, when you look at the map that Cedra showed, and the green and the yellow, what that actually represented, beyond the economics of it, it represented the development pattern of Sonoma. It represented the historic development pattern on the east side and the modern development pattern on the west side. Modern development was, you didn't put street trees in, you made the road as wide as you possibly could make it to make the cars travel as quickly as you could possibly make them travel, and provided ample parking. And you left the tree out because it just took up space and clogged all the, infrastructure. And so what we have inherited from that development practice is a yellow spot in that map rather than a green spot from the edge of town or the side of town that developed during this actual movement, during the 20s and 30s and during the movement of the beautiful city. And we have an environment on the east side, which is very pleasant, very walkable. And we have an environment on the west side, which for however many reasons, is not that. And so I'm encouraged by the idea of addressing the west side with the urban forest management plan, but I would encourage addressing it in a much broader way. And how do we reduce the impact of those wide streets and empty sidewalks? And where do we place the trees to mitigate those things? Maybe it's a much larger project than what we consider taking a tree and planting it in someone's yard. Maybe it's actually planting trees in the street, literally, to change the streetscape to the benefit of the movement of the car, to the benefit of pedestrians walking on the sidewalk, and to the benefit of the entire neighborhood in terms of the environment that it lives within. And then the tree is also sequestering carbon. So, last time when we were here, I spoke about the idea of integrating our codes, and that every decision that we make about planting trees should also go through the filter of how do we then reinforce that idea in every other ordinance that we change in the future. Where's the touchstone? And I do believe, like I said the last time, that the climate action plan is that touchstone, and that we should filter the decisions that we're making through that. Because I do think that we're at that kind of threshold point. We have to consider our community as a holistic community, not as an efficient, functional, get the thing done community. And so, I appreciate your presentation greatly, and I think that we should just when as a group, as groups, when we go away, we should think about those things and think about, it's great to plant trees. It's also great, and I'm on this kind of horse right now. It's also great to reduce asphalt because we don't have to plant as many trees. So anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Willers. Anyone else with a comment? Yes.
Thanks. One of the issues on the west side, of course, is the zoning's different too. So there's a lot more commerce on that side. So maybe some more attention to how much the commercial properties have to add trees. I'm just wondering, the question of having the public join us in ad hocs, how does that affect, like, for example, Manny Hernandez from SEC? Or would that be like an advisor that would be hired or contracted with? I mean, how would we bring in someone like that?
So they wouldn't. Okay, so there's a couple of different things that could be done. Is that they would come and give a presentation at a commission meeting and, provide information in that form versus meeting privately with an ad hoc committee. Or there's a meeting in which the public is invited to the ad hoc and we just agendize it. So there's many ways that you can do it. It's just sometimes the ability of the ad hoc committee is to work on a project and see that project through without having to agendize a meeting every time. And so that's the key aspect of it.
I think it's important to remember that the goal of the Brown Act is not to suppress participation. It's to prevent decisions being made that should be done publicly, made privately by a group of people with the authority to make decisions. And so it regulates the communication between commission members to a certain number below the majority threshold or even smaller. And it reduces or restricts communication by a member of the public with individual members of a commission or a council who, and that individual member of the public then tells each of the members of the commission or council about the conversations they've had with other members of the commission or council. That is prohibited by the Brown Act. That's called a mere meeting in seriatim. There are all kinds of things that the Brown Act covers, but the essential purpose of it is not to squelch the opportunity to collaborate on things. It's to simply protect the public from the circumstance of decisions being made privately out of public view. With that in mind, certainly if there are certain conditions or situations where a member of the general public would be helpful or deemed essential to a discussion of an ad hoc group, as Jennifer has said, those meetings can be agendized, covered by the Brown Act, and held just like the meeting we're having right here tonight. And so I don't see it as a big problem. Anyone else? Mr. Conlon.
Thank you. So Commissioner Willer's comments get me thinking about just how integrated all of this is. And for example, just to illustrate the development patterns problem that he described, I sit on the Transportation Authority Citizens Advisory Committee at the county level. We review funded projects that are developed in all the jurisdictions. We were looking over at the Fulton Road project in Santa Rosa. And this is a large residential development that went in. Funds were contributed to improve Fulton Road in the north side of Santa Rosa. And they are doing some extensive tree planting along that. But the location of the trees, they've essentially created a much wider road, which will be perceived by drivers as a place to speed. And I think now there's an appreciation for that in the city of Santa Rosa that wasn't there maybe 5 years ago when this project began its development process. So what that sparks for me is how, as we do start to think about tree protection and tree, where these corridors are going to be optimized and improved, there's other competing needs for that public egress easement real estate. And I remember 10 years ago when we started Transition Stone Valley asking the question about, well, why can't we plant along the bicycle path? And the answer was, well, people might fall off their bikes and hit the trees if you plant on the path. So I think we're probably not stuck in that old thinking any longer. But in terms of the other uses, I'm thinking about food security and community gardens. And we showed a film at Transition, Incredible Edible Todd Morton, which is a town in the UK where a couple of gardeners got together and just planted edible food everywhere, and that enhances food security. We have a pretty pro-garden community by the numbers that Cedra just gave us. So that would be another thing to integrate into our land use planning as we're thinking about these corridors. And then, of course, the other thing is solar aperture in our parking lots, because trees and solar panels over a developed space like a parking lot could be in competition. And so we might want to think through that interaction. So just some comments there. I hope you're all thinking about this. I know you're all thinking about these things too, but enjoy.
Thank you. Further? Donna?
Just a comment to continue on that. I mean, I would hope that the urban forest plan would be the place that those things could be integrated. So not just thinking about the tree planting and strategy, but how that intersects with solar panel administration and other things. So I mean, I think the presentation that was given was an excellent way to start thinking about that. And so if we could incorporate that into the urban forest plan, even if it's not a little bit outside of the normal thing that we think about, I mean, that might be the opportunity we can integrate.
It's called a general plan, isn't it?
Well, this could be a part of the general plan, but it's a defined, something we're trying to define right now. That's more of a specific plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A quick comment, if I may.
Go ahead.
I think plans are great, urban forest plans are great, and so on. I tend to be much more interested in action than in plans, and some of you will not be surprised to hear me say this. In that regard, I'm pleased to note that we have funding from CAL FIRE potentially for tree planting on the grounds of Sonoma Valley High School. I'm meeting with a CAL FIRE funded arborist on Monday morning. It was supposed to be last Monday so I could present our results tonight, but she got ill. Her son got ill, so she had to postpone a week. But we'll be looking at a variety of options on the high school land where we actually have available CAL FIRE funding for an arborist to be working with us and to actually plant some trees, where of course the high school has to agree to, obviously, but we'll see if we can do a little moral suasion with them. There's also been a great deal of interest over the last 6-8 weeks from the sister cities community. As many of you know, Sonoma has 7 sister cities, one of which interestingly is in Ukraine, which has its own kind of more poignant aspects at the moment. And there's great interest now in planting 7 trees somewhere in Sonoma, each with a nice plaque, and having the publicity associated with the Consul General from San Francisco come and be part of the process, and to further enhance our broader efforts at tree planting and green tourist Sonoma with these kinds of activities. There's also increasing interest in a green pocket forest, sometimes called a Miyawaki forest, on the west side near Friar Creek. So there is effort underway. There's a community group that I've been in touch with that says we don't want to wait for the city to do it. The city would have to approve at the council level the use of the land, but they are looking at various local organizations funding the process of moving forward there. So that's just a comment about some of the actions that are underway while wonderful plans are also being devised.
Okay, thank you. Further? Well, I've got a comment or two. Surprise, surprise. I think that who knows what kind of creative ideas might come out of this process. There's a vacant parcel adjacent to the vet cemetery, which is actually owned by the county. And it is between the Blue Wing Inn development and the Vets Cemetery borders. And the northern side, the northern border of that parcel, is the boundary of the city cemetery. I've sometimes thought that it was a perfect parcel to look at, and that this would solve problems both for the city in terms of revenue for the cemetery and provide an opportunity for tree planting, for the city to look at a green burial program, which would turn that vacant lot with the agreement of the county or the purchase of that parcel from the county, because it really is encircled by the city at this point. It's an island property owned by the county. Would be able to combine the green burial concept with the planting of trees in a green burial park. And there's already a nice row of trees lining the vet cemetery. So there's an easy transition. But there's who knows what kind of other ideas, like your Miyawaki tree islands and the other things. All of these are ideas that can bubble up to the surface. You know, we talk about an urban forest, but it's a little bit of a misnomer to me, because the trees and the quote-unquote forest we have in Sonoma is more like an arboretum than it is a forest. It's reflective of the personal choices of homeowners largely, and the city, who willy-nilly decided, oh, that would be a nice tree to have in the yard, or that would be a nice street tree, without any regard to what the natural companionship of trees are in the wild, or what goes with what. You end up with an Erythrina bidwillii, which has fantastic leguminous orange, crimson flowers in the spring, right next to the post office. The tree must be 50, 75, 100 years old. It's being crowded by a group of plum trees, which are slowly but surely crowding it out of existence because the Erythrina doesn't grow in the same habitat as these plum trees do, and its habit of growth is entirely different. But it's a fantastic tree. It's the only one in all of Sonoma. It's a semi-tropical. It rarely thrives in this environment, but in this particular case, because of where it is, it has thrived. I suggest you walk over by the post office in late spring and try to find it. It's just on the other side of the boxes that hold the newspapers and things. We've got treasures all over this community because of this arboretum-like reality of what we have in this town, and that's both an opportunity to educate the public about the varieties of trees and also give people a sense, if you can point out, and the tree inventory will do this, give people a map to be able to decide, do they really want to plant that species of tree given what they can find out about what it eventually will become. I mean, a sapling there are some trees that go through stages of growth where the juvenile growth and the leaf patterns are entirely different than the growth patterns and the leaf shapes of the mature tree. And they have these adolescent stages, and then they reach adulthood and the foliage looks entirely different. You don't know that when you buy a sapling. And the reality is that if you can provide the public with real life examples of what a specimen will become, it will impact what people plant. Because what happens now is people plant incompatible plants and trees, and then once they mature, they start to cut them down because they're not what they expected. They're not what they wanted. They didn't know what they were going to become. So there are just so many opportunities for education and opportunities to inform the public about this magnificent arboretum we have in town. I've been trying to catalog the plants on my own, and on Facebook I've been putting up the Barking Up the Right Tree series of pictures and the Great Trees of Sonoma series, and just doing what I can to kind of document on my own what it is we have here that's interesting. Sometimes to me a great tree has nothing to do with stature, has to do with being the only one in town, like the Erythrina that I've mentioned. So I just think, we're just filled with nothing but opportunity here. And as some of the comments that were made tonight point out, there's an intersectionality about all of this that's now come to the fore. And I made mention of this in our other meeting. This is no longer just, we like trees, yeah, we should have trees. This is a much broader conversation now, and it's touching, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic, it's touching on the survival of the planet and its future. I don't know who said it, but there's a aphorism about the person who plants a tree understands they are never going to stand in the shade in their lifetime. And so the commitment we're making in this process is a commitment to future generations. We can look at it in a very materialistic sense and say, oh, this is about us, and we don't want the climate to change, and I want to have a good life, and I want to enjoy my community, and that's okay. That's an acceptable criteria, but it's a bit materialistic. The broader view is, what are we doing for the future generations in this community and for the planet as a whole, which is an entirely different aspiration as far as I'm concerned. And I'm very excited by conversations like this and the kind of information that's come up tonight, because I think more and more people are thinking this way. You're all thinking this way. We have people in the audience thinking this way. There's something changing in our world, despite all the terror and monstrous inhumanity that's taking place around the globe. There are good things happening too, and this is a chance to reflect on all of that. Anything else? Yes, ma'am, come on up. Come on up, it's not too late. We have almost no one here. So come up and regale us with your comments.
Allow me to regale you. Just very briefly, I'm Cindy. My husband and I just moved here recently, and we moved from a very large metropolis. When we knew we wanted to move out of there, we opened up where we were going to live to the entire world, and then the entire United States, and then it came back to California, and then the entire California, and then we landed here in Sonoma, and we just bought a house recently, and we purchased here and we want to live here. A lot of the reason is because of the nature and the trees that are here, and all the other beautifulness, nature of Sonoma. That said, there are some, and this goes right along with your comments, Mr. Barnett, is when people plant trees, they don't know what they're going to turn into. We really, really debated. We fell in love with this house just here on the east side. It has a couple of big redwood trees right next to our house. And we really debated. We talked a lot. We had 3 different tree experts and arborists come out to talk to us about them. It has not damaged our house or the pipes or the foundation yet, but the closest one is 6 feet from our house. The next one is 7 feet. They're so close. And we said, okay, we love it, so we're going to buy here. And we did. But we said, okay, we'll probably have to take those trees out. We don't want to. I'm planning a huge garden and other plantings, and I don't want to take trees out, but we just feel like we'll have to for the safety of our home, and they tower over top of the house and stuff. So I'm looking into the permits, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen tonight, and that's why we came to learn more about, I thought I might learn more about this process, but I've been calling City Hall, I've been calling arborists, I've read on the website, the tree ordinance and stuff, and apparently I've missed the quarterly meetings where people talk about. It's coming up in March, so now if I put my application in, I'm really not sure if I need a permit or not, because I understand there's some limited exceptions. I feel this might fall into that, but we'll see. I'll do whatever is necessary. But now the next meeting, I'm told, is not till June. So I've got a bid for somebody to take these trees out. It looks good, but now I'm learning that I might have to, I have to get an arborist and a report and then wait until June to find out. And then and then there's 30 days after that. So we came here because I thought we might learn about the process, so that you might talk about this issue. But since you didn't, I thought, well, I'll just give you one homeowner's perspective on that.
Well, thank you, Cindy. It was Cindy, right?
Yes.
I know that gets complicated. I don't know if you've actually gone into City Hall to speak with anybody. What I would suggest you do is do that, and they can direct you as well, potentially to a member of staff who can help you evaluate what the legal implications of doing what you want to do are. Mm-hmm. And all of these things are under study at the moment, and I can't tell you that what the rules are would pertain to your particular situation, but city staff will be able to give you guidance about that.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Welcome to Sonoma.
Thank you.
Yes.
Couple of things. What we haven't talked about is keeping in mind defensible space and fire-safe plants. Jennifer? And also UC Davis, apparently in their Master Gardener program, you can request a speaker. So if we want someone to come and speak on any of these topics, it looks like they can make that happen. That's all.
Well, and let me say, with regard to one of the items you brought up, which is defensible space. Home insurance companies are canceling policies all over California, particularly in Northern California. A house that we own that my daughter and granddaughter live in the Springs had its homeowner's house insurance canceled. And they required that the trees within 30 feet of the house be removed. Well, that takes you into the neighbor's yard. When you have a 15-foot side setback on the sides, you're 15 feet into a neighbor's yard. So obviously, there's very little one can do with appealing or combating the judgment of an insurance company, which is under obviously no obligation to grant a policy. I think one of the things we will need to add to our whole inspection of this topic and planting and so forth is the reality of the changing landscape of insurance coverage, because it's really making it difficult to get insurance, and the options are reducing. For example, Allstate is not writing any more homeowners policies in California, nor is State Farm. And ultimately, you're getting down, as I'm discovering, to having to buy into the state of California insurance plan, which is a crappy plan, expensive and crappy. So we are going to have to take that into consideration in our new regulations and advice to homeowners as well. Yes, sir.
I want to make I guess, a footnote to what we've been talking about. I've never been accused of being quiet before. I'm a lead accredited professional and have been for a number of years. And one of the things I've been pushing for in the Climate Action Committee is to institute some of the U.S. Green Building Council policies and procedures and related entities. You get points when you want to be a LEED accredited, LEED certified building for landscaping, using native plants, reducing the use of fertilizer. This is very closely connected to what we've been talking about, but not been mentioned tonight. There is, for example, in Alameda County, the county has adopted bay-friendly landscaping practices for all of the county buildings. And it's something we ought to look into, because it doesn't just stop at where the tree roots stop. It goes on to the plantings that we do in our community. And we really haven't talked about that, but it's something that's worth mentioning and thinking about and incorporating.
Thank you, sir. I have long been an advocate of the Kill Your Lawn School of Landscape Design. And the penchant for grassy areas and lawns which harkens all the way back to the landed estates of Britain, has been very difficult to overcome. The city in the past had something it's called its Cash for Grass program. This was before the other use of the term grass, and the cash was basically city funding to remove your lawn and plant water-wise landscaping. I don't know if that program is still part of the city's, but that's the kind of thing you're talking about, and it should be part of our ongoing investigation.
Larry, that's one of the action items in the climate action strategies, called Cash for Turf now, to upgrade our language, but yes, indeed, to reinvigorate and re-incentivize further work on the Cash for Turf program is one of our strategies. On a different topic, but picking up from earlier, it sounded as if this evening we should talk a little bit about ad hoc committees that would be formed, and it seemed to me that P2 in the list of actions that is about planting trees and the implementation thereof would be an appropriate ad hoc. So I'm wondering if it's time to move into that discussion item, if we would open up a discussion or call for any kind of motion with respect to that.
I would recommend let's first make sure that there's no changes to the priorities, and if each commission kind of want to bless it, that list that we have, that way we can present that to council, and then I will let you guys decide. But if there's actions that want to occur sooner, we could look to form those ad hoc committees tonight, or we're going to have a pros meeting in 2 weeks. We've got
March 13th.
13th, and we have Planning Commission on March 21st, and then we're looking to have a special climate action meeting at the beginning of April, and we can do that as individual commissions, if, or tonight. So
I would hope that some of the ad hocs would cross commission boundaries.
right, and that's why I was
Which
saying
is
we
gonna
would
make
go
it
to
easier
each
to
one.
do it tonight rather than in the individual commissions, if there's interest on the part of my colleagues.
Well, I unless I've misheard Ms. Gates, the issue of cross-commission membership is something the city attorney is currently looking at. So I don't want to prematurely take actions tonight that we find out we have to reverse ourselves on at a subsequent date.
So he's still trying to just firm that up to make sure.
I would not ever want to be accused of prejudging an item, certainly, and taking action.
All right, let me proceed this way. First order of business then is to approve the priorities as they've been laid out, or have suggestions that they change. Is there anyone who has a comment or would like to change the priority list in any way? Mr. Conlon.
Thank you. I just have a question about whether being high on the list is a higher priority, and if so, that safety and enforcement policy at the bottom of the page strikes me as maybe not something I would be in support of.
So if you look at the right-hand column, it says what fiscal year would be the implementation. So changing the code overall around safety and enforcement, we would look at for direction from our urban forestry management plan to give us more specific. And the one that I was talking about above, I'm trying to bring it back up. I think it was in education or planting and maintaining on P4. That one I was saying that we could start now, basically identifying how do we use the tools that we already have in our toolbox and making sure that we're enforcing the replacement factor in our trees.
Wouldn't that require that the city tree list be a higher priority?
Which?
R3.
Yeah, so that's why we're understanding our inventory and canopy first, doing the urban forestry management plan with the city tree list, and then updating our codes to address what we've identified in that management plan. And so there's enforcement of replacement that we can do sooner, but in the actual safety and enforcement section, I was looking to get guidance from an urban forestry management plan. That was the discussion and recommendation.
So these priorities, the three types, would run concurrently?
If you're looking at R4 through R6?
Well, no, E, P, and R. So like,
Oh.
say E1, P1, and R1.
Yes. So
All
these are just
concurrent.
groupings just to help isolate the topics.
Thank you. That's helpful because, I think about the city council and the goals prioritization discussion. There was a little, we want to be clear, I think, in this group, large group. So I understand that E, P, and R are all, a part of the difficulty for me is that the printed copy I have has a big white stripe in it, so I can't see all those dates. But they are going to happen more or less synchronistic, and so that's fine with me.
Okay. Well, just in terms of procedural order, if we're going to proceed with an approval of the priorities, do we do that commission by commission with motions and a vote?
I think that would be cleanest.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the priorities that anyone wants to make? Okay, then. We'll start with the Planning Commission, and I will ask for a motion to approve the priorities as presented in a second, please.
I would make a motion to accept the priorities as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We give a roll call, please.
Commissioner Nugent?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Gorman Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Willers?
Yes.
Commissioner Wyrick?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dombach?
Yes.
Chair Barnett?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Would you like to take on the next commission's motion?
As appropriate. I would be eager to hear a motion and a second from members of the Climate Action Commission to approve the priorities as stipulated earlier this evening and in writing.
I would like to make a motion to approve the priorities as listed.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Phil. Is there any discussion of this motion? Seeing no hands, we'll go for a roll call vote. Natalie?
Commissioner Heinerman? Yes. Commissioner Nickel? Commissioner Ward? Vice Chair Conlon?
Aye.
Chair Morrell?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes, I invite my pros commissioners to make a motion to, and second the motion to adopt the priorities as listed here on this table.
I make a motion to adopt the priorities that's listed.
I'll second it.
Call for vote.
Commissioner Cullinan?
Aye.
Commissioner Mizuraka?
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert?
Yes.
Chair Donnelly?
Yes.
The motion passes 4-0-1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Jennifer, it's unlikely that we're going to meet again as three commissions anytime soon. Along those lines, how are you going to simply inform each of the commissions as to this matter of forming the ad hoc committees? And how will we coordinate the potential of a ad hoc that includes members from multiple commissions? How do you envision rolling this process out?
So as soon as I get the word from the city attorney, hopefully before the first pros meeting, since they meet quarterly, as well as the climate action meeting quarterly, but I will have that answer and then I'll present the item to each commission in regards to creating an ad hoc committee, agendize the item, and then I would coordinate for now until I get a sustainability coordinator to help with the coordination of those ad hocs and making sure that everybody knows who's on them from each commission.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I would like to present a motion that we create an ad hoc this evening of the three chairs of the commission, pending any dissolution of such a grouping by the city attorney, which we would accept as appropriate. But on the assumption that we may well be able to proceed, that would be a good thing to do this evening, in my limited opinion.
My question would be, what would be the project that you, as the three chairs, would be moving forward at this time?
Coordination amongst the three independent commissions in their agendized activities over the next 12 months with respect specifically to trees in Sonoma.
I would say that you don't need to do an ad hoc committee for that, and that I could coordinate with each of you, since I am your person on two of the three. And
I look forward to your ongoing coordination.
Yes, and I go to the third meeting all the time.
All right. Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify with you too, Jennifer. Now that we've approved the priorities on this list, according to the next steps, that staff will prepare the direction provided by these commissions to the city council, prepare a potential budget to assist staff and the commissioners on implementation of the priorities. So when do these ad hoc committees start? Do we wait till we hear from the council that they've approved these priorities and we get some sense of the budget allocations?
They've already identified, sorry, it just came on. Since they've already identified trees as a goal, I'm not hesitant to start the ad hoc committees. I'm really just waiting for the attorney. The work that the ad hoc committees would be doing that does not require funding are things that we can start. The things that require funding are the items that we would need to really make sure is before them and that they understand that this is our way or direction that we are providing to implement their goal around trees. And we are asking for funds to proceed with that. So I would look to present the priorities probably on the same hearing that we would be doing a mid-year adjustment so that they're connected. And so I'm hoping that that goes at the first meeting of April. If not, that's what I'm guessing right now is the mid-year budget is going to be at the first meeting of April.
And can you tell us a little bit more? One of the items is to recommend that the city arborist be put on the contract position. Would that happen fairly quickly? And if so, how will the arborist relate to the three commissions can we meet?
So that would be, they would be as a staff person, just the same way that Travis worked with a lot of you as well. He's a contract staff person. So it would be a similar way. You would go through, because they would be paid on an hourly basis, it'd be a little different because you would go through staff and we would coordinate again. But yes, they would be utilized by all commissions for implementation of our permit processes and things.
Okay. John Meserve, did you have any comments on the actions tonight or the priority list or other comments?
I don't. And this is fabulous. Where you guys are going. This is incredible. And I can feel the energy in the room, energy in town. Let's just keep going.
Oh, you sound like such a tree hugger. Join the club. Okay. Well, I think that completes our agenda for tonight. Unless there's any other commission member comments that you would like to make? Yes, sir.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to share an observation. Earlier this week, I walk my dog every morning. It's the highlight of his day. And we walked to the plaza, not through the plaza because I'm not an anarchist, around the perimeter. And earlier this week, I noticed the new receptacles are in place, the trash, recycle, compost. Sometimes it feels like our work in these committees moves very slowly. But it's a huge improvement. It's a huge improvement. And I hope, and it's just in time for springtime, so I hope the next time you're on the plaza, you notice the new receptacles and recognize our hard work.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Well, I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn, which does not require a second.
Motion to adjourn.
Approved.